Okay, fantastic. Yeah, that should be live. Great. So thank you everyone who's listening now and everyone who's going to be watching this afterwards. So we've got another second episode today of Lessons from Leaders since the first one went so well. I've got Jamie, Leonard and Chris Branch with me today, who are both founders of companies and very knowledgeable in the area. So we're going to be talking about the power of content. And yeah, so for people who don't know who you are, Jamie, do you want to give yourself a brief introduction, and then Chris, do you want to follow up?
Yeah, sure. So Jamie Leonard, co-founder, CEO of the recruitment events company. People will know us mostly for RecFest and maybe even the RO100. We do a lot of other events around that as well. That's me.
Fantastic, thank you. And yourself, Chris?
Yeah, so I'm a founder of a micro agency called Seed to Branch. We essentially do content first development on LinkedIn specifically, helping out brands to do B2B marketing better and more efficiently.
Fantastic. I love the name as well. Chris Branch, Seed to Branch.
It's got a triple meaning actually, because it is a legacy term in the industry to do content seeding, which is like spreading your content throughout the sort of web. So as well as that and the growth obviously from Seed to Branch and my surname being Branch, then it has like a triple meaning. Yeah.
I know. I bet you were so happy when you thought that one up.
Yeah.
We had someone on last week called Adam Butler, and he said, and my company's called Adam Butler Limited. And I went, yeah, great, Adam. Well done. You put a lot of thought into that one, haven't you, mate? Sorry, go on.
We've got the recruitment events company. That's pretty much on the nose.
That's true. Actually, I was thinking that.
It's very, very clever.
It's actually the recruitment events company as well, isn't it?
In case.
Yeah. So Jamie, how do we know each other? I think we must have met through either RecFest or some recruitment events that's happened. I was trying to think earlier how we sort of first met. It may have actually been at RecFest.
Might have been at RecFest. I think we may have met maybe with Antonio.
Yeah, that probably would have been.
Probably a while back there. That's how we first kind of got to know each other. I think when you was doing the recruiting thing.
Yeah, no, definitely, and then I'd not heard. So there's this event that Jamie's company does every year. Well, not this year, but we don't know, but it has done every year in the past called RecFest, and essentially it's just a ton of recruiters. And me and Chris were talking. I think it was 2 nights ago, Chris. About recruiters getting sort of going towards your industry at the moment. So imagine 3,000 of those people that you've been dealing with all in a field together, getting drunk for the day, but with some fantastic with some fantastic speakers, and it's just the most amazing event where you've got these really fantastic speakers on, and then everyone has like a really good sort of like party at the end of it. And it's all really good fun.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I'd never heard of it before, and the first year I went, I was amazed at sort of how the quality of speakers and how it all was. But yeah, so that's that was always really interesting. So I was thinking about I asked you both to prepare a funny story that you'd heard, and I'll say the one that I thought of from the other day. I was speaking to someone that they were doing a very serious talk, and their talk was on how you have to make allowances for people to. If there is a crying kid in the background, or there's dogs or pets walking through, and they were doing a very serious talk about that. And in the middle of the talk, and it was sort of 40 people, it was a CEO speaking to people, and in the middle of the talk, their cat got up on the desk and just turned around and just showed its bum directly to the webcam. just to sort of prove the point, right? So I mean, what's Jamie? What's some funny things or the funniest thing that you've seen so far during the lockdown or COVID?
I mean, funniest things I've seen is definitely people that haven't used Zoom before trying to get their head around it and not realizing if I'm walking away, you disappear.
Yeah.
And people find themselves in some very uncomfortable situations, or people that have just ranted because they don't know the mute button, and they'll just start talking about other people in the call. That's best. I think most of our clients have now seen my son's naked rear end. Like that's. We no longer apologize for it. He's there again. I can see him. You can see him. Let's move on. So yeah, his backside quite famous in the recruitment industry.
I love that. Is it almost going to be a staple of the recruitment industry when it's all over?
If he goes up and ends up being in the recruitment industry, people go, oh yeah, the boy with the You know, that's how he's going to be known forevermore. So.
Oh, I love that. What about you, Chris?
That's so funny because my story mirrors kind of both of your stories. Well, first of all, the Zoom call one. Oh my gosh. People trying to end the call and they're just like in static mode looking for the end button, but you can see the confusion on their face. Like, where is it? Am I still on the camera? I don't really know. But the other one was similar to the naked boy story. So I was on a call with a brand new prospect. I'd never really spoken to them before. They were sort of introducing themselves and what their cluster management is that they do. So they all have individual industries that they target. It's a big blue chip brand. And so they were telling me about their different industries and giving me all the exciting sort of information about what they do and everything. And a naked son ran in through the back. But not only that, he was holding a tooth in his hand, looked so happy because he's just his first tooth just come out, but his half of his face is covered in blood. So he's like a naked boy covered in blood in the middle of the introduction saying, Mummy, how much money do I get for my tooth? Oh, it was hilarious. And everyone just burst out laughing in the whole conference call, you know? It was one of those, like, it was kind of the best icebreaker you could ever wish for, in a way, because it was just like, we didn't know each other. It felt very professional. And then all of a sudden it was like, we're all human beings, you know? And then it was like, bang, we could talk to each other on like just a better terms. It felt like it was kind of a great icebreaker.
It's very humanizing, that sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that what I always do, and when my nephew's teeth were falling out, I'd always say, make sure as loudly as I could say in front of their mum and dad, my sister, say, yeah, you get £10 a tooth. And just to see my sister's reaction, just like staring at me, like, no, they don't, Neil. Shut up! Don't say that sort of thing. But no, I think these things have really humanized people, and I think it's really important to understand. I think people have gone from being super nervous about how they should be presenting themselves online to being almost overly concerned about how they look. You know, I was watching. I can't remember what it was. It was a round table where they got someone on specifically to talk about the camera angle that you should have of your laptop when you're doing talks. And I'm like, you shouldn't be bothered that much about it, you know. Otherwise, people are going to start stacking books up with their laptop, and it's going to be a whole issue. And then I think that given the current sort of climate and what's been going on, people need to not take it too seriously. I think the content of what you're saying still needs to be the most important thing that you're worried about. Otherwise, you know, I don't know if anything like me, if you get too nervous about that sort of thing, then you just sort of start, you know, blabbing stuff that doesn't really make sense. So I think that's those sort of humanizing moments have, or these sort of stories and these moments have really humanized everyone. And I think that's only a good thing.
I think as well, kind of the key, and where I think the humanization becomes is you're inviting people into your house.
Yeah.
You're trying to see, you know, you do see their kids, you see their other half, where they live in their garden, and it kind of, you know, I don't know, business over the years, and certainly companies I've worked for in the past, people try really hard to not show who they actually are.
Yeah.
And they work hard at it. We wear ties, we wear a suit, we talk in a certain way, we don't say certain words. And I've just found this, I've found it really liberating to kind of actually talk to people in their own homes. People are more relaxed and open. So yeah, this is like one of the real benefits that lockdown has given us, I think.
Lack of gatekeepers too, massive lack of gatekeepers. If you're able to directly communicate with someone on LinkedIn like we do, you know, where you're trying to directly speak to the marketing director of Coca-Cola, for example, there's no potential way that you were going to phone Coca-Cola and get to speak to that person. Whereas if they give you their personal WhatsApp because they're working from home and you're calling them at home in their armchair in their living room, different story. So yeah, real eye-opener this whole period.
And I don't know about you two, but I found people are so much more open to just having a chat. For some, maybe this is just allegorical, it's just my experience, but I feel like if I message someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, do you want to jump on and talk about this, they'll probably say yes right now. And I don't know if that's because people are, you know, either working more, working less, or it is from their home, but that's definitely something to look at. So I mean, what I wanted to talk about was, because we've got Jamie, you've got you've turned you've pivoted a lot of your business to online right now, right?
Yeah.
And Chris, you've mainly focused on online, basically for the entirety of the business. Is
that right?
We're
entirely digital from the start.
Yeah, so I think it's a really good contrast to talk about, you know, the power of that online content, you know, from both those different sort of points of view. So I guess from a sort of I guess a good place to start would be, Jamie, how have you found doing that? How have you found that pivot? How did you go about it, and how have you found pivoting to creating online events or online content rather than in person?
It was scary, and there was kind of a level of denial for a while. You sort of say, well, we'll just delay it a little bit. And when you start to realize this is going to be a long-term thing, you have to move quite quickly. I think one thing we did is we didn't panic. And I think that's really important in these situations. We kind of let everyone else go before us. And we saw the platforms they were buying, the mistakes they made, where people were doing well. And, we took the view of, okay, we're now going to come into this. We were quite lucky in our first event that we had on the roadmap was Talent Tech Rising, which is a demo day in essence. So it actually worked really well online. It worked better online than it did in person. I know that our clients got a lot more leads out of it because we had bigger numbers. So we've got 3,000 people on it as opposed to 300 people that we usually interviewed. So that accentuated the amount of leads they got. Like Chris was saying, we opened up to different markets, which was fantastic because of the on-demand piece. And like we was talking about before this started, that drip feed of constant leads coming through because people are viewing the on-demand, watching the demo and going, actually, that's something I want to follow up with. It's been really positive. I think that ultimately, you've as an events company, you've got to be able to set up wherever your audience is. And I think what's going to be interesting next year is whether the world reverts back to mostly in person and some online events. I think there's going to be way more of a hybrid. I think it's going to be people that never want to go to events again because of what's happened, and it's far more inclusive by having both those options. But in terms of sort of the process of it, there's a lot of platforms out there at the moment. That's the first thing I'll say. To move events online. Not many of them are very good. The problem's kind of been that online events have historically been an afterthought to the in-person one. It's something you give away for free once your sponsor sign up to the in-person event. Therefore, the platforms have been pretty crap for the most part. And now there's this sudden surge of demand for an online platform. You're having to buy mediocre. There isn't great. I think you're going to see over the next 12 months, you're going to see some really exciting companies coming out doing for the online platforms. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's someone comes along like a Google or a LinkedIn or a Microsoft and just goes, we're going to own this space. Online events, because that happens, right? When an area becomes popular and profitable, one of the big guys just come in and go, that's ours. So I think you'll absolutely see that. And then, as event organisers, we just need to be ready for that point to actually invest in those new platforms. There's like levels of good. Something around kind of AR or VR would be amazing, but I've just not seen much out there so far that does it. Yeah,
I think that's it. I think it's most companies have had to. Well, most companies should have pivoted if they can, if they're at the sort of industry that can do that. And I think it was obviously very sensible of you guys to hold back a little bit. And it was really difficult to tell what was going to work because when I was starting this podcast, I was like, well, where am I going to do this? And I saw one or two people using Crowdcast quite successfully, and I was like, well, that's the sort of route that I'm going to go down then. And I think personally for me, I think you're right in that a lot of it's not going to go back to how it was. And I think a lot of the content that was done in person previously can now be done with online content, with online events. But something like a RecFest, which is so sort of big and is so it is so valuable and it's got such good content and it's such a good sort of day for the industry, for people out there, I think needs to stay. So I think you're right. I think there will be sort of a hybrid. Chris, from your perspective, I guess, did much change? I think we when we originally spoke weeks and weeks ago, you said, I've never been so busy in my life.
Well, it's very interesting, yeah, because a lot of people that were doing in-person events, they were coming to us and saying, look, we're going to be now doing webinars. We're going to be pushing webinars, doing all of these other things. So like, we know you as the digital platform builder. And so they've kind of always known us as that. But because they were entirely offline or mostly offline to begin with, they were then coming to us in waves as soon as it was what can we do online then? Just to answer that, you know, I would love to see someone like Spotify jump on this. They've just been heavily invested 100 million in the Joe Rogan podcast. This is a massive lucrative deal, and they're doing it via video format, and I think that they would be the platform amongst loads of others, maybe Twitch or something like that as well. As definitely this is a gaming platform currently, but like it could easily hold events. In fact, they hold gaming events inside massive games. So yeah, there's so many platforms out there right now, and I think you're right. In the next 12 months, we'll see a front runner, and someone will really take the bull by the horns and say, look, we're going to double down on this and get most of the major events, and most of the major event companies are all around the world on our platform. They may even do them as loss leaders just to prove to the rest of the industry that they are the ones to go to. This is what so many companies do, right? Amazon, Uber, they're just loss leading for years and years and years to grow a multinational sort of corporation, so that they are the ones like the industry go-tos, the pioneers, etc. But yeah, they do say that pioneers lead with arrows in their back, don't they? So I say, yeah, it's good that you held off in terms of like seeing what others were failing at in terms of the early platforms. And if there's no go-to standard, like that's really tough to know where to put your eggs in those baskets. And we've been trying to advise people as best we can. You know, like I monitor data very, very closely about like the type of links that we're sending out to people to go to events and whether or not they click through to them. So like Eventbrite, for example, has a very good click-through rate compared with other ones because it's more known and popular. And so people would be much more likely to sign up to an Eventbrite link than they would someone hosting it on their own site as a third-party link, because they may not be aware of your event or your brand, but they'll definitely be aware of Eventbrite. So if you can host it for a third-party platform like that, yeah, very smart stuff. But yeah, I mean, as you rightly said, busier than ever. Our clients may be tripled in this lock-in period, which is crazy. And, you know, we are a micro agency, so it's just about time management for us, especially with international clients. And I can't really hire fast enough. Like I'm having to be getting remote workers in that, you know, I would ideally like a shared office where I can train people myself. But I'm having to get skilled workers sort of remotely working on projects, freelancers. But that's fine for the meantime. But we could never have, I think it was right place, right time, right offering for us. That's exactly what it was. I didn't have any inclination as to this 12 months ago when I launched Seed to Branch. Obviously, I was just trying to make waves on a certain platform that I felt was the best for exposure, which was LinkedIn. And again, I did loads of testing around that. You know, Facebook's organic reach is dead. Instagram's organic reach is dead. So you're having to pay on all of these platforms, except for LinkedIn, where you can possibly get loads of B2B traffic for free for our clients. And so they're paying for our time rather than paying for ad budgets on top of our time, which is what our USP was, which is why a lot of people came to us, I feel.
Yeah, that's interesting. So LinkedIn was the only way to organic. So essentially they were paying for your knowledge of how to organically grow or grow organic impressions on LinkedIn. Yeah,
they were paying for our creative, which was unique to LinkedIn. It is a type of, you know, we have a unique content we call it a 5-into-1, which is like synchronized animated tiles. And this is a specific content that we don't see anyone else being able to currently make on LinkedIn, because it is quite a difficult process with the alignment and everything like that. And then, yeah, we had an organic, we call it organic first content, which is leading to business development. So it's positioning as much content organically in people's timelines, using that information and data to reach out to people and have inbound, warmer conversations with people. Again, most people through LinkedIn, if they specialize in LinkedIn, they just do cold outreach. And you might as well be on an email platform, or you might as well be, because you get the same 2 to 10% open rates, you know, whereas we're getting like 75 to 95% open rates. That's the difference, I guess.
And when you mean open rates, you mean click-through rates on like LinkedIn content, or?
Yeah, on invitations to connect, on everything. Okay. You know, because we only really use data. So we'll position content naturally, and then we're using engagement data to then reach out to people. So they're aware, they're in the awareness stage. We're not reaching out to someone who we ideally want to work with just because we want to work with them. We're reaching out to them because they fit our ideal buyer persona and they've already engaged with a piece of our content.
Yeah.
Why would they say no? You know, they could have scrolled past it in their feed and not been interested in it. And that's kind of our filtering process, is that we know we've got some sort of prior engagement, therefore they must have some sort of interest.
Yeah, and is that sort of a point system that you have if they've engaged with maybe 2 or 3 different types of content in 3 different ways, they hit a number, and then it changes from awareness to this person is ready to engage.
That's it. And we have a third-party app that monitors all of the data, and we lead score it, and we do all sorts of touch points. We try and personalize the whole experience for them, and it's really about how can we, because you're limited on daily outreach on LinkedIn. It's 100 per person per day from a personal profile, pretty much. I've heard other people say it's more like 3 to 5% of your overall connections. So if you have more connections, then it's possibly bigger than this. But so knowing that it's 100 per person per day, it's like how much of a high percentage can we get? Close to 100%. And cold outreach has really given you 10 to 15, and warm outreach has given you 75 to 95. So it's just 5 times exponentially growing your ideal buyer persona connections, first degree connections.
That's fantastic. I know that the typical sort of, because this is something that I looked at previously, and if you just send a connection request, a lot of the time, if you're putting in a sort of a message into your LinkedIn connection note or whatever it's called, and it's not something that's relevant, or it's a bit salesy, you're going to get a less high connection rate than you are if you just click connect. People are much more likely to accept. So you need to really have. We used to do a lot of A/B testing on this and work out, and change the message each time until we got the rate higher and higher, but never got anywhere near 75%. So whatever you guys are doing, they must be doing something really, really different to what we were doing. Obviously, a lot of researchers got into that. So I mean, this brings me on to my next point. How has your content from both of you? How's the content and the way that you've been producing and showing that content changed during the lockdown, and will it change back again in any way after the lockdown's finished, or will it, or has this been sort of a change in the type of way people are going to consume content for the foreseeable future, do you think?
I think from our point of view, there is a lot of online content all of a sudden. Everyone has a blog. Everyone has a
podcast. Yeah, I started this a couple of months ago. Yeah.
It's crazy though, because everyone all of a sudden, we just saw a lot of our clients all try and do online content very quickly, and most of them did it badly. And that's the problem. I think one of the biggest problems we have right now is there is so much bad online content, certainly in our market, that there's really no kind of filter or no one curating it at all. So you have to do something that is different. You can't just do a webinar anymore. You're one of 1,000 webinars that day, probably at the same time, to be honest. So I think platform you use is vital. Differentiating yourself with the speakers. The good thing is, because of what's happened, because you can pre-record online events, you can actually get like some of the best speakers you wouldn't have got before. They can't fly, or didn't have the time, and then the brand for us is just if it's just another webinar, it's not going to stand out. It has to be something that people can look at and say, I know what's going to be different about that. I mean, we've been talking about how do we get beyond the screen. How do we get people doing stuff in their home that is, for example, we're talking about with TA Global Gathering. Do we get people to, I don't know, some sort of competition, people to decorate, the room they're going to be watching it in. Just trying to get through the screen and actually get more into the physical environment as well. Not quite sure we're going to do that yet, but I know it's definitely been a massive change for us. And just actually having a strategy around online content, where before we'd just record speakers and chuck them out. And if they got some views, great. And if they didn't, they didn't. And some of them would get more and some would get less. So yeah, massive difference.
Fantastic. What about from your side, Chris?
So in marketing terms, I would class that as UGC, so user-generated content, and I do that a lot. In fact, I gamify my whole audience via seed to branch in order to keep the engagement. And I even promote comments, and I promote content from people that are doing well via us, in order, because they're our marketing tool. Really, it's the core audience that's pushing this further than we ever could. So yeah, that's smart thinking. And yeah, the same is going for us. Like, we are changing things. I mean, I've personally changed the tone of voice of the agency. I mean, it was really much more like a person, like it was like a blog instead of a company page, which is what made us stand out in the first place. But I have fundamentally changed the overall brand tone of voice to be more empathetic, sympathetic, and humor based, just in order to try and, you know, get people's emotions on. Because if you can give someone a laugh when they're going through the most stressful times in their life, they will remember you forever.
Yeah.
And that's what I figure is these guys, we're future banking them for conversations, you know, months away from now. In fact, we couldn't deal with more business if it came through right now, which is kind of a crazy thing to be saying, you know, because as a business owner, you never want to be turning away business, but we are literally cherry picking the people that want to work with us right now. And I'm trying to understand and influence certain other people for the future, just having them, like the resonation of having them engage with like dozens and dozens of your social media posts means that they'll constantly be showed your future stuff as well, because the algorithm's training itself to understand that they constantly like your content. So if you're able to give them a laugh or a smile or anything right now, then they'll give you a like. And then when you post a future business post, they're much more likely to be shown that via the timeline and via the algorithm. So yeah, we're really just trying to keep the humor up, trying to keep the creativity up. As you rightly said, you know, lots of recruiters are coming into the creative industry, and this is bringing in, you know, I don't want to say bad vibes overall, because it was a different mentality. It's just a different mentality. You know, obviously recruiters have their way of getting new business, and they are very persistent, and they're very, you know, following up a lot, which is a good thing as a business owner. You know, you'd want someone to be doing that, but creatives are much more relaxed and laid back. And I felt that there was some, you know, some bad crossover to begin with, but then it leveled out as they sort of realized, okay, so now we're playing in a different ballpark. We'll play by different rules, and that's fine. And they've come around to that a lot, which I was very pleased with. Now we're in a situation where they're slowly tailoring off and going back to work, you know? So I've seen, it was just the way they positioned it. You know, a lot of people positioned it as we're here for the mental health of creatives. And yet I felt like it was really them trying to get business. And that was, to me, it was a no-go, because that's a shady tactic to use in social media if you want to future-proof your business. So I felt like the ones that were genuinely in it for the right reasons, I was so happy about it that we had the crossover from recruitment to creatives. And the ones that were in it because they were, you know, just trying to future-proof their business, and they were in a haze-like mindset because everything was crashing around them, I felt like, yeah, it was just a tough transition for some people. But yeah, that's, so I haven't really changed a lot. Just the tone of voice, I guess, is a summary.
Yeah, I think there's something really important that you just said. Anything right now where people have been helping each other out, or have been doing stuff like, you know, during Mental Health Week, I had someone, an expert on from in that field to talk about that, and did the week after as well. There's nothing wrong with trying to future-proof your business, but if you're going into one of those conversations completely disingenuously, then you're never going to get something good out of it. And it's always, I always think about the phrase, you know, passing it forward. You know, you're doing someone, you might do someone a favor, make an introduction that has no immediate benefit to you, but you know that it will be passed on, will be passed forward if and when there's an opportunity in the future. And I think that's very different to it being very transactional and you saying, I'll do this for you if you do this for me. And I think that's where a lot of that sort of disconnect probably was. We were talking before as well about online content and how people aren't recording it, and how people aren't people aren't utilizing that correctly. I know you two were having a good chat about that before. So do you want to, Chris, do you want to start talking about that? And Jamie, do you want to jump in afterwards?
Yeah, so evergreen stuff, you know, it's just evergreen. That's what it is. It's 24 hours a day, accessible internationally by anyone, anywhere, anytime. And I can't tell you how many people have downloaded our PDFs at 20 past midnight in UK time zone. You know, these are CEOs that outside of their normal working hours are looking online for something. They're looking online, and they're looking at all sorts of times in the night. And yeah, if your sort of webinar is an hour long and this is the only version of it that exists on the internet, then you're missing out on 99.99% of traffic essentially. And it's just like, what's the best way to even have it? Like, this is going to be a long form piece of content. could you micro chunk it up into little snippets of information that could go onto social media? Like a 30-second clip of this could be the teaser into the like long form piece of content. So this is what we do. We really create funnels for people like that. We are repurposing long form events and stuff like that, making it into more social savvy content so that then they can download the longer piece, which is, then people are interested. Again, it's all about interest and lead scoring, and from our perspective anyway.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think in terms of I think from our point of view, we would always record speakers, and I said before, we'd do it and chuck it out. I think, look, all the platforms now allow you to record. You absolutely should be doing it. I think when we look at things like attention span, the one thing that I think a lot of people forget about the difference between an in-person event, and I am talking about events, I apologize, in-person event to an online event, is when you're in person, you've got their attention, maybe they're going to check their phone. When they're at home, you are fighting against Facebook, you are fighting against their children screaming, you're fighting about, literally, as we were talking about 10 minutes ago, a delivery guy come here and started talking to me. I had to go, sorry, I need to go, and I'm doing this at the moment. So you're fighting for people's attention. So, we've found that 15 minutes, it seems to be the optimal time now for speakers. Anything over 15 minutes, and you start to lose those numbers quite quickly. And try to create an impact with it as well. Everything, and it's just about everything looks like this right now. What we're doing right now, pretty much everything looks like this. So if there's anything you can do creatively to make it look different, that's always going to stand out as well. But I agree with Chris. Taking every speaker, taking every piece of video content you want, and how else can you slice it down? Can you do out of an event? We've started doing the top 10 takeaways, and we'll just take a snippet from each speaker, and that becomes a playlist or one video of these are the top things that come out. And just having fun with it and just trying different things and seeing what sticks. LinkedIn is an amazing platform, and fantastic platform, and it's interesting. Chris will probably know more than me what the attention span is on a LinkedIn video in terms of how much time do you have to get someone's attention.
This is a really interesting point that you bring up, and actually, the way that impressions work on a video on LinkedIn is that you need to be watching at least 3 seconds of it and have it within 50% of your feed for it to be classed as an impression, which means that it will overall be shown more and more organically to more people. Whereas from an image perspective, you actually have to get less time of them viewing it in order for it to be classed as an impression. So overall video impressions are a lot lower than image impressions or PDF impressions or document impressions. It's very interesting. Actually, they just upgraded LinkedIn to give way better insights into video and where people are tuning in from around the world and how long they view it for and things like this. So it's literally changing every week in terms of what you can get out of the analytics and back end of video content on LinkedIn. Even I've seen that they're beta testing in Brazil LinkedIn Stories, which is like Instagram stories, but on LinkedIn. I've got my frustrations with that in that, the platform is very basic in itself. Like our animated GIFs, they really struggle to have this content themselves. And I feel like they're playing massive catch up with other social media platforms to try and, not be so far behind. And actually they need to sort out the platform they have currently before they start going, 3.0 or 4.0 in their content strategies. But yeah, the video is going to be much, much bigger on LinkedIn very, very soon. I feel, especially with these stories, but I don't know many people on LinkedIn that would make stories. It's not like the Instagram crowd.
Yeah. No, so I was going to ask you actually on that, because this is by introducing this, we're making another step towards LinkedIn being less of a professional network and more of a personal one, because some of the stuff that people post is questionable. Why relatable to what? Or it just. You see a lot of people seem to forget that it's not Facebook, and here's a picture of my dog, and I'm like, that's cool, but what does that have to be professional? Why is that not on Facebook or Instagram? I just
because they're getting more views on LinkedIn these days.
I can tell you, having studied all of the top influencers on LinkedIn and crunching millions of impressions, literally, it's about personalities on LinkedIn. It's not about business. Unfortunately, it's humans to humans. There is no B2B. LinkedIn does not exist as a B2B platform because a company profile can't talk directly to a prospect. And therefore, there is no B2B in LinkedIn. Even though it classes itself as B2B, it's always humans to humans. And the most viral tendencies you can have are controversy. And I mean, controversy is an interesting one, and I'd love to talk about this because, you know, like you said, you'd rather be Marmite than vanilla. And that's the way that LinkedIn works. As if you're vanilla and all you do is talk about business stuff, you will not stand out, and therefore you will not get the organic impressions that we get. And so the Marmite effect has a different sort of angle to it, in that the people that follow us, our core audience, will back us to the hill. And they will say all sorts of things on our threads, which comments obviously spread it further and further and further. And so someone will say, this should be on Facebook. And then someone will reply and say, no, it shouldn't. This is actually marketing related humor that, as me as a marketing director, is getting some sort of perceived value from. You know, it's lightening up my day. So I'm here to tell you that we're his ideal buyer persona, and we say it shouldn't be on Facebook. And so that thread, though, you know, where people are arguing back and forth whether it should be on Facebook or not, is actually doing your marketing for you, ironically. And so, yeah, I've had many discussions with people up to this day about, you know, whether stuff should be sort of professional on LinkedIn, or whether actually 99% of the vanilla boring stuff is overly professional. And so what's the difference maker? It's doing something that's not overly professional. Now, if we position our company profile as being someone that you'd want to talk to, you'd want to share it with your friends genuinely, you know, it's not like as a business we're telling you to please share it, please share it. They just want to share it. And it's because we act more as a person via a company page that we've grown ridiculously fast. And let's talk about that in terms of content marketing strategies, because from a personal profile, I grew from 3,000 to 40,000 connections. It took me 12 months. I got about 15 million impressions last year. And that was all well and good. And everyone said to me, people buy from people, you know, LinkedIn's all about people and stuff. And then they said, company pages are dead. And I said, okay, challenge accepted. You know, I'm going to try and post from a company page. I'm going to make it seem as though it's a personalized page. It's going to be more of a blog that people want to go to than it is a company page ever selling anything to anyone. All of our selling's in direct message. Our company page has got half the following that I have, and yet we get 5 times the reach. So utter nonsense what people say about company pages on LinkedIn. Utter nonsense for the most part. They say they're dead, they can't get them to grow, and that's because all they do is post sales-based professional content, and they can't get that engagement to actually get it organically spiraling. So yeah, I agree with you. Some of the nonsense on LinkedIn that should be on Facebook, you know, when they're talking about relationships or something like that, that's got nothing to do with what they sell at all. That should stay on Facebook because that's personalized content. But if you can make it like so that it's a hybrid, this hybrid word is a great part to this podcast, right? So if it's a hybrid between personalized and it's also business related, then you're onto a winner, I think, personally.
So do you think that there's a difficulty in drawing a line there, though?
Yes, absolutely. And people, if they don't exist, like if you're a startup brand right now and you have brand guidelines that are very strict and yet you've got no one engaging with your business, scrap the brand guidelines. You know, just do whatever you can to make a splash, because otherwise you're going to sink. That's the literal facts of it. So yeah, we didn't need to do that because we had a good following regardless. But I've seen other people purposely not posting things because they think it's going to mess with their brand guidelines. Whereas actually, you know, and the other thing is like, if it takes 4 weeks to sign off a post, it's not reactive anymore.
Yeah.
You know, if a board has to okay this and that, and that everyone's okay with this happening, it's not reactive anymore. You're not going to get the engagement you once could. It's kind of needless you posting it 4 weeks later. It's dead in the water by that point. So you've got to have one person or 2 people in charge of your social media that you thoroughly trust. They fully get your brand tone of voice. They operate within brand guidelines to a certain extent, but there's gray lines, you know. There's obviously black lines that you would never cross, but there's gray lines that is like, okay, so that's okay. Not all the time, but it's okay, you know.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Jamie.
It's someone we both know. I remember when he first started out, he was, you know, he would make it his, on a daily basis, he would just post stuff to piss people off. And he knew it wound up, and he knew they would comment, and he knew that every time they commented, he was getting more and more exposure, and it bait them. And
that's terrible.
Was that?
That's terrible.
Yeah. But I mean, that was his strategy, right? He would do stuff to annoy people, and he'd say it within the post. Whether it works or not, but we definitely got a lot of exposure out of it.
Well, that's what I mean by that line. That there's
entirely negative spiral, though. That's where it is a really bad idea. Because you're just going to create a hatred crowd. What you really want is the people that love you like Marmite and the people that hate you like Marmite. That's what you want. You want, this is my favorite product to buy ever, and this is my least favorite product to buy. You want those, because if you are someone that you're very forgettable, if you're in the middle, you are just so forgettable. If you're playing it safe all the time, people will say, I could give it or take it. And that's not what you can have in most businesses right now. You need to either be someone I will trust entirely or not trust at all, I feel. But, but yeah, it's so true. The negative spiraling thing is a really detrimental part to any social media platform, let alone LinkedIn. I think it's really poor that some people play on negative stereotypes and mental health issues, like you were saying. And I actually saw a recruiter doing this too, positioning themselves as helping the mental health of creatives when actually it was just all about getting business. And I felt that was just a tragic way to have to market yourself, but there are certainly gray areas where you could go into this. That's just my position on it anyway. But yeah, I feel you in terms of like seeing utter nonsense on LinkedIn. Most of it is utter nonsense. I'm going to be honest. I scroll through my feed and I look at all the other feeds of other social platforms that we manage. And I think of all the platforms, there's most of the nonsense is here on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I think I agree that there's so much on LinkedIn that's just not relevant, but then I don't think it gets engagement. And I don't think that sort of, anyone's getting anything from that other than, maybe, I don't know, if someone's posting a picture of their dog, maybe they're a bit lonely. I don't know, but they're not improving their business in any way. But I think from what you were both saying just now, there's a really good takeaway from that, that for smaller businesses, because if you're up against someone like a JP Morgan or a Bank of America, for example, whatever industry it is, you're up against a larger business and you're a lot smaller. You have the ability to be more flexible on what you're going to post out. You don't have shareholders that you have to worry about what you're going to post out, unless you're Elon Musk and you don't care anyway. But you don't have that, that approval process to go to. So you have the ability as a smaller business or a medium-sized business to be a lot more flexible around that gray area that Chris was talking about, to post out something that's going to be slightly controversial, that's going to be more Marmite. Whereas a larger company who's probably, has a brand that could be damaged, isn't going to be able to do that, or is certainly not going to get approval to do that. So I think that's what a really good piece of advice for people to take away from that, if you're in that sort of team, or whether it be recruitment or marketing, as a smaller business going up against some big larger companies. So
don't get me wrong, if you're in investment banking, that's not the strategy for you. There's certain industries that it just would not work in, but recruitment and marketing specifically, I've seen it work for both. So it's like, you've got to sort of understand your industry as well as your buyer personas, and you've got to know the whole reverse engineering of the funnel, that this is the right thing to do. So I'm never guessing, but just to finalize that point, because I think a lot of people that may watch this later on go, oh, he's encouraging Facebook content on LinkedIn, and I don't want that to be the thought case.
I don't think that's what people will take out of it. But yeah, no, I don't think that's what people will take out of it. But I think that the important thing is, the important things that I've taken away from that, to reiterate the point for anyone who is watching this later, is the Marmite thing. Don't be afraid to do something that's a little bit sort of controversial, but make sure, as long as it's not negative or detrimental, and as long as you're not doing that to on purpose to manifest some sort of negativity. I think that's something that is Marmite. Some people will love it, not just everyone's going to hate it and you're going to get some attention. That's not what we're advising. So I think that's great. So I know we've only got a few minutes left. So is there any last sort of points that you both want to make about the power of online content? Jamie?
Just some of the stuff we were speaking pre-recording, I suppose. I mentioned to Chris that, when two things that we talked about that we haven't covered yet. Number one, if you are hoping to speak at an online event or a podcast, get the right equipment. I think we're all in agreement that it doesn't have to be expensive. Just get the right equipment though, because quality control is going to become more important. And the final thing, which we spoke about, was, because of the longevity now of online content, you speak at an event, you speak for 2 days, people remember you afterwards. You speak at an online event, it lasts forever online. So make sure that the content ages well and doesn't embarrass you in the future was kind of my final 2 points.
Yeah, the relevancy I would 100% agree with. How relevant is it in the future? I would say my last point would be about vanity metrics in terms of social media. Like you said, there's just no need. Even if you're causing a negative stir, there's no need for it. Like vanity metrics aside, how much business is it leading to? Understand your buyer personas. Make sure that your content marketing strategy is never guessing. You don't want to ever reinvent the wheel, because that's where your budgets just go down the toilet. So understand exactly what they're sort of looking for, and then reverse engineer that into your strategy and go from the buyer persona backwards, basically.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think there's some really good points there, Jamie. I completely agree. I know that you've had some challenges around that recently with people, pre-recording things that are going to be, sort of not as easy to use with your online events. So I think if you are going to be doing these speaking events, then it is important to invest in the right sort of equipment. And Chris, to your point as well, I think that, make sure that if you are going to be putting content online, and if you aren't already, and you're watching this and you're wondering what the power of content is going to be, it is that engagement piece. And when you're putting content out, one of the main things, in my opinion, I'll ask you to afterwards if you agree with this, is you shouldn't be directly selling to people. You shouldn't be directly selling yourself or directly selling your product on posts on LinkedIn. It's all about getting engagement as to who you are and what you're about. Your personality, your persona. That's what you should be presenting to the world, not sending out posts saying, this is what I'd like, this is what I sell, would you buy it from me? It needs to be about who you are and your persona. And I think that's an important thing to take away. I mean, would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. I don't think to this day in 48 months of posting on LinkedIn, we've ever sold via a post. It's always in the direct message strategy or the follow-up strategy or in a screen share like this or something like, it's always in person, because no one wants to be sold to. It is social media at the end of the day. People think of it as B2B, but it's social media and no one wants to be sold to. So
I absolutely agree, but I'm hoping no one goes and checks my LinkedIn feed. First time this morning, I was asked by one of the commercial guys. They said, "We've got a new product. It's a little bit different. Can you just put something out?" And I hate putting out sales messages. I was like, okay, it's a bit different, and they built a little video for it, so I said, okay. But everything outside of that, definitely yes. Except
if you're building a little video for it that's creative, and you're showing your product in a creative way, that's what we do.
Fine.
Yes, of course. And as long as you're giving some perceived value, just always remember people are on social media for selfish reasons. So if you're not giving them anything and you're just trying to sell to them, you've got no chance. Unless your product's the cheapest or the best, there's just no chance. And so, if you're giving them some sort of value through a video or a demonstration or, then of course you can sell. But don't try and flog your products with no, that's what I'd say.
With no give in the first place. Perfect.
Give.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a fantastic point to leave it on. Like always, I'll be posting this all up. I'll clip it all up and I'll be posting it over the next week. But thank you so much both for your time. It's been super, super interesting to hear both of your opinions on online content. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
All right. Thanks. Take care, guys. Thank you very much.